There's a version of me that used to believe loyalty was the glue that held a family together. That if you showed up enough, gave enough, sacrificed enough, the people you loved would do the same. My name is Nora. I'm 31 years old. And it took a group chat message sent at 11:47 on a Tuesday night to finally teach me that some people will drain you dry and still call you selfish for running out. I was the kind of daughter who answered every call. The kind of sister who drove 2 hours in a snowstorm because someone needed a ride. I wasn't the flashiest one in the family. I wasn't the one who made people laugh at dinner or remembered everyone's birthdays with balloons and homemade cake. But I was the one who showed up. Every single time. Without being asked twice. My brother Derek is 4 years older than me. Growing up, he was the one my parents talked about at the dinner table with pride in their voices. Derek got a scholarship. Derek made the varsity team. Derek shook the principal's hand at graduation while I sat 3 rows back, quietly happy for him, thinking that's just how our family worked. He was the star. I was the steady one. I told myself that was okay. I told myself for a long time that it was okay. After college, Derek had big ideas. He always did. He wanted to open a logistics company, a small freight brokerage that he swore would take off within 18 months. He had the personality for it, the confidence, the handshake that made people feel like they were already in business together. What he didn't have was capital, a credit history that any lender would touch, or a financial track record that stretched longer than a few freelance gigs. What he had was me. I had spent 5 years working as a financial analyst at a mid-sized firm in Charlotte. I had no flashy lifestyle. I cooked at home most nights, drove a used Honda, and put every extra dollar into savings because I had watched my parents struggle and I swore I never would. By the time Derek came to me with his business plan printed out and spiral-bound, I had just over $60,000 sitting in an account that I had planned to use for a down payment on a condo. He laid the folder on my kitchen table like it was a gift he was offering me instead of the other way around. "Nora," he said, leaning forward with that smile. "This is the one. I just need someone to co-sign the loan. You've got the credit score, you've got the history. The bank won't even look at me without a guarantor, but with your name behind it, this is a done deal." I read through the plan. It was actually well thought out. I had questions, and he answered most of them. My mother called that evening and said, "Nora, you know Derek has always had the vision. He just needs one person to believe in him." My father said, "You'd be doing this for the whole family, not just your brother." So I signed. I co-signed a business loan for $120,000. I didn't take a cent of it for myself. I didn't ask for equity, a formal agreement, or even a handshake deal about repayment terms. I signed because he was my brother and because my parents looked at me like I was finally doing something that mattered. The first year, Derek's company showed real promise. He landed 2 regional contracts, hired 3 employees, and sent me a bottle of wine at Christmas with a card that said, "None of this without you, sis." I kept that card in my desk drawer. I told myself this was what family looked like when it worked. Then the second year came. One of his major contracts fell through when the client went under. He lost 2 employees. The third stayed but was owed back pay. Derek started calling me more often, but not to update me on the business. He called to borrow. First, it was $8,000 to cover payroll. Then $5,000 for a gap in operating expenses. Then $12,000 because a supplier was threatening to pull their agreement, and he couldn't let that happen. I transferred every dollar he asked for. I told myself it was an investment. I told myself he would turn it around. I kept a spreadsheet on my laptop, not because I planned to demand repayment, but because I needed to see the number clearly so I could stop lying to myself about how much I had given. By the end of that year, the number was $41,000, on top of the loan I was legally responsible for. I still hadn't said a word to my parents about any of it. Derek knew that. He counted on it. Then one afternoon, my phone rang. It was a loan officer from the bank. She was polite, professional, and completely calm when she explained that the business loan I had co-signed was now 60 days past due and that if the account wasn't brought current within the next 30 days, It would go to collections and impact my personal credit score significantly. I sat very still at my desk for a long moment after that call ended. Then I called Derek. He didn't pick up the first time. Or the second. The third time, he answered mid-laugh, like he had been in the middle of a good conversation that I was interrupting. "Hey, what's up?" I told him calmly what the bank had said. There was a pause, then he said, "Yeah, I've been meaning to call you about that. Things have been rough, Nora. I've been dealing with a lot." "Derek," I said. "It's 60 days past due." I know. Look, I just need a little more time. Can you cover it this month? Just this once? I'll get us back on track, I promise. Just this once." He had said that phrase to me 11 times in 14 months. I had counted. I told him I needed to think about it. He said, "Okay," and we hung up. That night, I stared at the ceiling of my apartment for a long time, running through numbers, running through memories, trying to figure out at what point I had become someone's financial plan instead of someone's sister. I made my mortgage payment that month. I did not cover Derek's loan. 3 days later, the family group chat erupted. My mother sent the first message. It was long and it was devastating in the particular way that only a mother who has decided to be disappointed in you can be. She said I had always been jealous of Derek's potential. She said I was choosing money over family. She said that real loyalty meant standing by someone when things got hard, not abandoning them the moment it cost something. Then Derek's message came. He said I had set him up to fail. That I had dangled my support over him like a carrot and pulled it back when he needed me most. That he had told his wife and his kids that their future was secure because of me, and now I was making him look like a fool in front of his own family. Then my father's message, which was the shortest and the one that stayed with me longest. "Nora, your brother has always had more on his plate than you ever have. The least you could do is carry some of the weight. If you won't do that, then we don't have anything more to say to you." I read that thread 3 times. My coffee went cold. My hands were steady, which surprised me, because inside something was shifting, something was breaking quietly, the way ice cracks before it gives way all at once. I typed one sentence and hit send. Understood. Then I put my phone face down on the counter, went to my home office, opened my laptop, and spent the next 2 hours reading every document I had ever signed related to Derek's business. Here is what most people don't know about co-signing a business loan, and this part matters. A guarantor on a commercial loan has legal standing that most families never think about. I had signed as the primary guarantor, which meant that while Derek was listed as the borrower, I held a formal legal interest in the loan obligation. Depending on the loan structure, a guarantor can formally request a review, dispute default conditions, or, and this is the part that changed everything, trigger what's called a guarantor cure, right? Where I could step in, bring the loan current directly, and in doing so, gain a documented legal position to pursue recovery from the borrower. I wasn't going to cover his loan out of guilt, but I was going to cover it in a way that put everything in writing. I called my own lawyer the next morning. Her name is Patricia, and she had helped me review the original loan documents when I signed. I had never needed her since. She remembered me immediately. I explained everything. The $41,000 in personal transfers, the missed payments, the group chat. She listened without interrupting, and when I finished she said, "Nora, you have significantly more leverage here than you realize." We spent 90 minutes going through my options. What I did next was quiet, it was methodical, and I didn't warn anyone it was coming. First, I exercised my guarantor cure right and brought the loan current. This stopped the collections clock and, more importantly, it created a legal paper trail establishing that I, not Derek, had made the payment. Patricia sent a formal letter to Derek that same day notifying him that per the terms of the guarantee agreement, I was now in a position to pursue full recovery of any amounts I paid on his behalf, plus documented personal transfers totaling $41,000, with interest, through civil litigation if necessary. Second, I contacted the bank directly and requested a formal review of the loan structure given the borrower's payment history. The bank had already been watching the account. Within 2 weeks, they issued Derek a notice that the loan terms were being renegotiated and that without a satisfactory plan, the guarantor's protection could not be extended at renewal. In plain language, when the loan came up for renewal in 4 months, I would not be re-signing. Derek would have to qualify on his own. And we both knew he couldn't. I didn't post anything in the group chat. I didn't call my parents. I didn't explain myself to anyone. I just waited. It took 11 days. My phone rang on a Thursday evening while I was making dinner. It was Derek. I let it ring. Then my mother called. Then my father. Then Derek again, 3 times in a row. I turned the volume down and finished cooking. The next morning, Patricia forwarded me an email from Derek's attorney. Apparently, he had hired one, quickly stating that my actions were retaliatory and made in bad faith, and requesting that I immediately agree to re-sign at renewal and release any claims against the borrower. I read that email slowly, twice. Then I forwarded it back to Patricia with 2 words: handle it. What I didn't expect was the knock on my door that Saturday afternoon. I looked through the peephole and saw my mother standing on my doorstep in her good coat, the navy one she wore when she wanted to seem composed. Derek was behind her. My father stood at the bottom of my porch steps with his hands in his pockets, looking at the ground. I opened the door. My mother spoke first. Her voice was different from the group chat version of her, smaller. Nora, we need to talk about this. Derek could lose everything. The business, the house they used as collateral on another line of credit we didn't know about until yesterday. His kids, Nora. Think about his kids. I looked at her carefully. Not with anger, not with the particular hot shame that her disappointment used to produce in me like clockwork. I looked at her and I felt something I hadn't expected. Clarity. Mom, I said, do you remember what Dad wrote in the group chat? She shifted. We were upset. He said you didn't have anything more to say to me. I kept my voice even. I'm going to take that seriously. Derek stepped forward. His voice had a different quality than I was used to. The confidence was still there, but underneath it was something frantic, something cornered. Nora, come on. We're talking about my family here. My kids had nothing to do with any of this. You're going to blow up everything over a loan payment? I'm not blowing anything up, I said. I brought the loan current. I saved your credit. I protected myself legally because no one else in this family was going to protect me. What you do with the business from here is your decision, same as it's always been. You're ending my renewal, he said, his jaw tight. Without your guarantee, I can't refinance. You know that. I know, I said. And I also know that when I called you 60 days past due, you asked me to just cover it. Again. Like the 11 times before that. I know that when I didn't, you and Mom and Dad decided that made me the villain. I've been thinking about that a lot this week. My mother reached out and touched my arm. Nora, please. We're your family. I stepped back gently. Not roughly. Just enough. I know you are, I said. And I needed you to be my family when this was happening to me. When I was covering payments out of my own savings. When I transferred $41,000 I had spent years earning. I needed someone to call me and say, this isn't right, Nora. You've done enough. Nobody did. Not once. Nobody answered that. I have a lawyer now, I continued. If Derek wants to resolve the repayment of what I'm owed, Patricia can work something out with his attorney. I genuinely hope he finds a way to keep the business running. I mean that. But I won't be the guarantor on a loan that's been mismanaged for 2 years while I was kept off to the side, called jealous for having limits. I looked at all 3 of them. I'm not doing this anymore. I closed the door. Carefully. Without slamming it. I stood in my hallway for a moment, listening to the muffled sound of my mother saying something I couldn't make out, then footsteps down the porch steps, then silence. Then I went back to the kitchen and turned the stove back on. The weeks that followed were quieter than I expected. Derek's attorney and Patricia went back and forth for about 3 weeks before Derek agreed to a repayment plan for $28,000 of the $41,000 I was owed. It wasn't everything. Patricia was honest with me that getting the full amount through litigation would cost more in time and stress than the remaining $13,000 was worth. I signed the agreement. It wasn't satisfying in a dramatic way. It was just real. A real number, a real plan, real documentation. The loan came up for renewal and I did not re-sign. Derek had spent those months quietly approaching other lenders. I found out through a mutual friend that he'd managed to restructure part of the debt with a different institution at a much higher interest rate, with his wife as co-signer this time. The business was still running, smaller than before. I don't know if it will survive. That weight used to live in my chest constantly. Now it doesn't. My parents didn't reach out for nearly 2 months. When my mother finally texted, it was a short message. "I hope you're well, Nora. I've been thinking." I read it and put my phone back in my pocket. I wasn't ready. I still didn't know if I would be. Some hurts don't resolve on a timeline that other people get to set. What I did during those months was build something. I took the $28,000 in recovered funds and combined it with what I had managed to save after everything, and I made a down payment on a small duplex in a neighborhood I had been watching for 3 years. I live in one unit. The rental income from the other covers most of the mortgage. For the first time in my adult life, I am not financially entangled with anyone who hasn't earned that trust. I also did something that surprised even me. I started volunteering 2 Saturday mornings a month at a financial literacy workshop run through a local nonprofit. They work mostly with young women who are navigating debt, family financial pressure, or recovering from situations where someone they trusted had cost them significantly. I don't tell them my whole story. But when I sit across from a woman who is trying to figure out if she's allowed to say no to someone who shares her blood, I know exactly what I want her to understand. You are allowed to protect yourself. Love is not the same as liability. Being the responsible one in your family does not mean being responsible for everything your family does. And the moment someone tells you that your limits make you the villain, that is not a verdict on your character. That is information about theirs. I'm not someone who believes in clean endings. My relationship with my parents is complicated in ways that will probably take years to sort through, if we sort through them at all. Derek and I have not spoken since he's stood on my porch. I don't hate him. I don't spend time wishing things had gone differently. I spend time making sure the next 5 years of my life look like something I actually chose. That is the thing nobody talks about when they describe stories like mine. The revenge isn't the satisfying part. The paperwork wasn't the satisfying part. The satisfying part was the first morning I woke up and realized the only financial decisions I had to think about were my own. No one else's loans. No one else's payroll. No one else's promises that next month would be different. Just my own life. Just my own name on my own door. I didn't get here by being cruel. I got here by finally taking seriously the possibility that I deserved the same loyalty I had been giving away for years. When my family wrote me off in a group chat because I stopped bleeding for someone else's dream, I had 2 choices. I could chase them, explain myself, beg to be understood, shrink back into the version of me that kept everyone comfortable. Or I could reply with one word, call my lawyer in the morning, and decide that being underestimated for the last time was the best thing that ever happened to me. I chose the second one. And I have not looked back.